So what would you say if I told you that your blessings aren't just for you, that your riches, your wisdom, your power isn't just about you or yourself, but it is to raise the people around you and to influence and impact their lives as well? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. God's blessings and His expectations. Hey there, my name is Joyce Omondi Waihiga. Welcome to another episode of CITAM Church Online. So the book of Esther tells the story of a young, beautiful Jewish woman who wins the heart of a Persian king and then becomes queen. It's quite a fairy tale. And oftentimes the story that we are taught from Esther is about beauty, it's about influence, it's about courage. And sometimes I tend to think that the men think that there are not as many lessons for them through her life. But I'd actually really disagree with that. I think there's a number of lessons that we can draw from Esther, whether male or female. And we're going to be looking at one of them today, which is basically saying that great blessings come with great expectations of us. So just a bit of a backstory. Esther is queen, and although she shares in the wealth and in the power of the king, you could not just enter his presence without being summoned. By law, you were to be put to death. Now, at this point, a decree has been given out for the Jews to basically be wiped off the face of the earth. I mean, they were going to go through mass murder. And so Esther's cousin Mordecai is nudging her to go into the king's court to plead with him on behalf of her people. Obviously, she's very nervous about this because, as I mentioned, you need to have been summoned into his presence. But secondly, as much as she was queen, he hadn't asked for her in 30 days, a whole month. You have to wonder, what was this guy doing? He wasn't thinking about this beautiful woman. So she was nervous about this, about just being able to go into the king's presence unannounced, unsummoned, and then make this tremendous ask of him. But one of the things that is really fascinating about her is that her attitude and that of Mordecai is really something that we should emulate. Let's read together Esther chapter 4, verse 12. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, these are her words of just saying, I haven't been summoned to the king. It's been 30 days since I last saw him. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this." Every time I read this last bit, and who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this, it gives me chills literally every single time, because you can just imagine the weight that Mordecai is really opening up to Esther, like making her aware of the weight of responsibility that was on her. And her attitude is just fascinating, because I think, she could have despaired and then just decided to try anyways and save herself. But she recognizes the position that she is in as queen, seizes that moment, and decides to act. Esther knew what she had to do, and she knew that it could cost her her life, but she decided to act anyways. And we see her say in verse 11, if I perish, or in verse 16 rather, and if I perish, I perish. What courage. Now, this is in stark contrast to our attitudes today, I'd say. I mean, for many of us, our world outlook today is heavily influenced by what people say. And for one, we say, well, every man for himself, or, you've just got to do you and I'll do me. Each person looks out for themselves. In Kenya, we like to say, kila mtu ajipange. But this is completely contrasting that ideal. And this is probably one of the greatest lessons that we can learn from Esther and Mordecai. That if God has done remarkable things for you, you have reason to believe that he expects remarkable things from you. Let me repeat that again. If God has done remarkable things in your life, you have reason to believe that he expects something remarkable from you, or something corresponding, proportionate to the blessing that he has placed in your life. We ought to consider, when God blesses us, what he requires of us. This sobers me up every single time, because really what it's saying is that we are blessed to be a blessing. You are blessed to be a blessing. We are all blessed to be a blessing. And honestly, this is one of the reasons I really disagree with the prosperity gospel, or the so-called prosperity gospel, because it puts emphasis on the individual, and it's then all about themselves. My car, my house, my business, my education, my success, my this, my that. And this is where we miss the mark, because we forget that God has given us our education, our money, our connections, our power, our beauty, our whatever, our talents, our skills, whatever it may be. God has given those things to us to be instruments for his purposes, to serve his people. So many of us miss the mark at this point. And to me, this portion of scripture, as we read Esther's story, reading about her courage and Mordecai's courage and their resilience to even be that daring to stand before the king, is such a tremendous challenge to you and I today. And the truth is, it also tested Esther's sincerity, the sincerity of her affection for the Jewish people, the sincerity of her affection for her community. And again, so many of us fail in this point, right? Because it was calling for her to put herself, even in her royal garments as queen and everything, to put herself behind her people. Amazing, I think. So maybe you're listening to me and you're just like, wow, by the way, Joyce, I think, yeah. And I completely understand, because I think we all struggle with it. Life is hard, and we're all trying to push and hustle and get our way to make ourselves and our loved ones get ahead. But this is a reminder that even as we pursue those things, to recognize that it's not just for us to go and boast about it. It's not just for us to go and show off about it, but it's really to understand that there is something that God is requiring of you as well. And that is why he has given you the blessings and the advantages that you have experienced in your life. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. Maybe you can share your experience. Perhaps there are, things you've been taught before, or things you've struggled with. And maybe this is nudging you a little bit as well to begin to reconsider what it is that God is requiring of you. I'd love to hear from you. At Joyce Omondi, you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'd also love to take your comments in the comment sections below, and also to reach out to us at CITAM ChurchOnline. Until next week, where I'm going to be sharing, I think, a model of decision making that we can learn from Esther. We're going to touch on that next week. But until then, would you have yourselves a wonderful week. We'll see you next time. God bless.